Hi, I'm John O'Jones, and today I want to take you through my solve for when we visited Yellowstone a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago, whilst on a 5.5 week holiday in the United States, visiting some really amazing places, we decided to go to Yellowstone. This is my family. This is us posing for a nice overlook of the Grand Prismatic Spring. And if you do get a chance to go there, if you haven't, it really is an amazing place. Much easier to see from this vantage point. There's a lovely little trail to Fairy Creek Falls or Fairy Falls, and you can get up here. On the ground, it's a little bit hard to see, lots of steam, so you don't quite get the view you see on the postcards, but this definitely is a brilliant vantage point. So my solve, this isn't the first solve I had. When I started looking at the treasure chase back in January, February time, I originally, the poem's quite cryptic, as we all know. I looked at something a bit more literally, I guess, a place near Yellowstone in Idaho, where there's a river called Warm River. And my starting point, I guess, was where Warm River joined another colder river, and that was my Warm Waters halt. And with very loose connections, I managed to make my way up to a waterfall area. And the clues were what you see from most newbies, I guess. And being the stubborn person that I am, I desperately didn't want to have a newbie solve. Coming over was costing a fortune. I wanted to make sure my solve was pretty convincing before I committed coming all the way to Yellowstone, hiking amongst some dangerous wildlife. So I scrapped that one, helped by finding that Forrest Fenn had ruled out Idaho. So this is the solve that I had worked on for many months, many hours per day, reading Thrill of the Chase, poem, seeing what was out there, consuming as much as I could. I think I consumed most things, more than once. So my search was near the north entrance to Yellowstone. We stayed in Gardner for the 4 days we were there. 2 days searching, 2.5 days searching, the rest looking at all the great things you can see in Yellowstone. My soul starts in one of two places, but both apply. Originally, I thought Mammoth Hot Springs. It looks like the water has frozen in the limestone, the effect of the limestone and the look of it there. But reading through, I was really concerned to make sure that the thrill of the chase and what was in there was contributing, and trying to minimize where expert knowledge was required or this and the other, and debating in my own mind whether things were too obvious or shouldn't read into them too much. So I'm not one for reading into is it New Mexico, is it Wyoming, Yellowstone, because of quantity of content in the book. It's more the poem and then individual hints in the book that I think are in there. So one of the first options is where Gardner River meets Yellowstone River. So the Gardner River has a lot of tributaries that are hot springs or come from hot springs, and is warmer the Yellowstone River, and that's a nice point to say that waters have halted. Um, Fenn does refer to Gardiner's Island in just after where he has the poem in the thrill of the chase. And I thought that was quite nice in that sense. The other option was Boiling River, the spring entering Gardner River where people bathe, quite a popular spot. And something that stuck out in the book there, I guess, kept playing on my mind every time I read it. The Borders story, borderline biddies as well in there. And that's pretty much bang on the border of Montana and Wyoming. That possibly is more likely for me to be where warm waters halt. The only thing that makes me think perhaps it's starting up in Gardner is the opening stanza where Forrest says, as I have gone alone in there. And I'm quite taken by thinking that in there means into the park. Either way, it's the same road, so it doesn't matter. So that's my beginning where warm waters halt. Just showing you the Google Earth view. There's a canyon in there. If you get old maps, it's labelled up as canyon. Clearly, as a canyon, and I'm taking down as being down. It can either be south or pretty much south in terms of on the map, as opposed to necessarily being altitude. So taking it in the canyon down, quite obvious from that. Next thing for me, so putting below the home of Brown. So this is a bit more complicated for me. Again, really trying to rein it in and make sure it's part of things that are in or linked to Thrill of the Chase, the poem. So for me, that is a car park at the base of Bunsen Peak, not too far there from Mammoth Hot Springs. Just to zoom in there a bit, you can see the arrow there. People who may have driven past this may have gone there to trek up Bunsen Peak or round to Osprey Falls. The only thing that made me doubt this a bit, I guess, it can tend to be a little bit busy. I know Forrest has said that when he parked up, there was no one around really. We'll come back to that a bit later. So why here? So there's a chap that just seemed very odd to me. Seemed a little bit of a tall tale, I guess. Buffalo Cowboys. And just alone having Buffalo and Cody, to me, this just stood out as the Buffalo Bills Center. Some link here to this in Cody. I think a number of people thought this. But bear in mind, Buffalo Cowboys in Cody. Let's see how that unravels. So this isn't necessarily how I came to this solve, but it's the easiest way to tell you the reasoning behind it. I chopped and changed, jumped about, but I wanted to look at the Buffalo Bills Center, who was there consuming most things out there a couple of times. I knew that Forrest was on the board of trustees here. I just wanted to know were there any links with anyone there. So here's one example. There are many annual reports from there showing who's on the board of trustees, but this is one from 2006, same year that the recent video of Forrest being interviewed there before he released the chase was out. I didn't hear the board of trustees, number of interesting people in there. Dick Cheney is in there. I think we've heard that in other sources from Forrest. But George Brown from Cody stood out. Obviously, Brown being part of this particular clue. So I looked into who George Brown was a bit more. So sadly, George died in 2013, 3 years after Thrill of the Chase came out. George was quite a local legend. 43 years he held a position as the manager of a ranch in Cody. pretty well known in that area, obviously by those associated with Buffalo Bill Centre. But the thing that stood out the most, I guess, was the ranch that he was manager of was the Hoodoo Ranch. It's a bit of a strange name that stuck out for me, and through all my research, kept coming back. Um, so the Hoodoo Ranch, what a strange name. On the right, you can see very faintly Cody, and then the Hoodoo Ranch is south of that. And I did some research around there, looking for souls around it, taking that as a literal piece. But Fenn's comments around it not being related to a structure, there's a bit of ambiguity around that, whether that's just where the treasure is or the whole soul. But that kind of put me off in the end. There were a few souls a bit closer to Yellowstone around, I think, Sunshine Reservoir as well, off the back of this. But Hoodoo Ranch stuck in my mind. So I was looking back over, trying to find older maps, things that aren't listed perhaps on Google Maps. And I found quite a few actually. And what came back to me, hit me like a ton of bricks, was right next to my area was a place called the Hoodoos. And I thought that's just like Fenn, to do something like that. Everything I'd read about him. So the only thing missing, I guess, was, what was George to Fenn? Did he even know him? Was he bothered about him? It's a pretty big clue if this was the answer and solution. So, Fenn would have to think something of him. So just to have a quick look, these are the Hoodoos, boulder-like deposits. Probably glacial, I'm sure someone will know better than me. Quite a big area there. This is what you see on the road as you go towards the Gold Gate area. So I wrote Forrest an email. Hello again. Did you know George Brown well as a fellow board member at the Buffalo Bill Centre in Cody? What was he like? I'm contemplating getting your last two books when in the States. Do you reference George in them? So things were starting to come together. Buffalo, Cody, Buffalo Cowboys. And Forrest replied, George was a wonderful guy, a ranch foreman, and a cowboy all the way. And as you can imagine, that was it for me. Cowboy hadn't come up anywhere else. Hoodoos, Buffalo Bill, Link in Cody, and George was a pretty significant person to Fenn, and he considered him a cowboy all the way. And for me, that was it. That was the link. And I thought, why are people not getting this? And they may have, and you know what, people may have looked at this before, and I'm a newbie, and hey, please forgive me. But I came to the conclusion that a lot of people, perhaps new people, wouldn't see this because the Hoodoos isn't on Google Maps. So there was a real chance that people were just missing this. And that really stuck with me as well. But as far as I was concerned, I had my home of Brown. So the next thing came up a lot in my research was Shoshone Indians. They were relevant when I was looking at around Cody into the mountains, and all over Yellowstone, really. They kept coming up. And the Shoshone Indians, I guess, I forget a lot of what I learned, but they were quite well known for consuming, I think they call them bighorn sheep or something similar. But they were nicknamed as sheep eaters. And they lived in a canyon close to my soul, famous for being in there. And the canyon was named after them. So my next clue, solved, from There Is No Place for the Meek, was Sheep Eater Canyon, either right across the track across Bunsen Peak or round on the bottom. You can't quite see that on the map. And the reason this was really keen for me, and I'd seen a lot of people's solves that they shared online where some of the clues were just sort of thrown away, no place for the meek, it's a bit scary here, or the bears, or it's too loose for what Fenn would have architected. He spent an awful long time on the poem, every single clue needed to have a fulfilling solve, or it just wasn't right for me. And I think in America, it's a well-known idiom, I guess. Meek as a lamb, certainly is in the UK. Um, I've taken something off the internet there. Meek as a lamb, to be exceptionally patient, humble, and mild in manner of spirit. It's very well known. If you would say meek, most people in the UK, I think, would say a lamb. A lamb is a sheep, and certainly isn't a place for sheep. Right next to Sheep Eater Canyon. So that was my Sheep Eater Canyon solve, and for me, I was getting closer. The next clue for me, Nye. Forrest was really big on the meanings of words, has encouraged that for people. So I was really keen that this needs to fit into my solve. And Nye, in olden use, I guess, was considered being on the left-hand side. The Nye horse, as the example shown there, copy off the internet, is the left-hand side horse. And for me, that just meant, as soon as you got to the edge of Cheaper Canyon or the trail there, go left. And that was me. So go left, follow right round. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy lows and water high. So the trail you can see up towards where that arrow is, you reach a creek. So if I take off this old map, you can see that is Glen Creek. Again, it's just a creek. Why would it be that creek? Well, just to zoom in there, there's a service road. You can't take a car on there, but that's the trail round Bunsen Peak. Meets Glen Creek and just goes over it as a bridge. And for me, that's the point at which you would go up your creek. So why this creek? Well, the clue obviously is there'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high or waters high, depending on which version of the book you've got. Heavy load for me, it really stood out that it was probably not deposits of anything. Forrest has said nothing to do with waterfalls in a roundabout way. For me, it started, is it pressure? Is it electricity? Is it the load of electricity? I think it was. And funnily enough, to my delight, I found that the first hydroelectric power was driven by the water in Glen Creek. What a find. How crazy for all those to match up. So the water coming through Golden Gates, the bottom part of this. So heavy load, electricity, water high. There's lots and lots of water coming through, driving the hydroelectric power station, the first one in Yellowstone. The other thing, just zooming into Glen Creek a bit higher up, it goes right up to Electric Peak. So if it wasn't about that, Electric Peak surely is enough for heavy load. So a couple of things verifying that. Another thing that really stood out when I kept reading the book, it seemed odd, out of place, was this line: "My church is in the mountains and along the river bottoms where dreams and fantasies alike go to play." My church is in the mountains and along river bottoms. My church. And that always played on my mind there. It just seemed out of place. And that kept coming back. And in my area, we've done the rounds there. I found something on an older map. Couldn't see it. It's just not there on Google Maps again. Thinking, why are people not seeing this? Cathedral Rock. Church, cathedral. How uncanny. How many hits before you start to think, crikey, this really could be the solve. So if you've been wise and found the blaze, for me, this was the blaze. So what is Cathedral Rock? Well, here's a Google Earth view of the location. It's from the other side, I guess, so you can see the end is ever drawing nigh, coming across. Where that red X is the point we saw the bridge that goes across Glen Creek. And you can just see on Bunsen Peak, that mountain there, there's a white looking rock formation sticking out of it. Um, that that's quite unique, quite well known, and you can see it from many angles. But I think it's all about the direction you're coming from. So if you've been wise, I like to think there's something about wise. I've not quite cracked that yet. I like to think is that sort of going round and coming to see it as opposed to see it from other angles. I don't know. But Cathedral Rock for me was the blaze. Um, what else was there to point to this being the blaze? Well, Bunsen Peak, as you'll know, Bunsen burner, it was named after the person who invented the Bunsen burner. For me, the whole mountain, Bunsen Peak, of course, that cathedral rock sticking out looked like a little bit of a flame shape sticking out of the Bunsen. So here's me using my imagination, as Forrest asked for. And it's a really dodgy looking Bunsen burner with the flame being cathedral rock behind it. And for me, it was just getting closer and crikey, seemed really tight on all the clues. So for me, where was the treasure off the back of this? Well, follow the creek. Where's my church in the mountains and in river bottoms where fancies and dreams go like to play, whatever that was. It was walk through the bottom. It's in a small ravine until you see that blaze. You can't see it from all angles there. You have to come round a corner, and the second you see it, look down, and you'll see something obvious, and then you'll be straight to the treasure. That was the plan. When we got there, it was with my partner and the two kids. Really self-conscious around the threat of bears to the family. Had the bear spray. It was all a little bit new and scary. So I decided instead of going all the way around, we could see the roads down to Joff Lake. You can see in the middle there. And I wanted to just cut across. What's really hard on the day, a lot of people say, as a newbie, boots on the ground is very different to what you see on Google Earth. It wasn't as different as I thought. On Google Earth, you can't really get down and see, so access to the creek was difficult in some places. But from Joff Lake, there was a nice car space, room for one. For me, I started thinking, oh, crikey, we got this slightly wrong, because this would be a perfect spot for where Fenn had stopped and no one else saw him as he kept going to take the two trips. Still think that might be part of it, but this was our shortcut, and because it was hard to see where we were, what we ended up doing was going to the easiest access to the creek, and it wasn't that easy, but we did have a 6-year-old with us, and for me that was the test of whether an 8-year-old who was quite agile could get there. So we got there, and we walked around, a bit of a crude line there in purple. We walked clockwise up and through, saw lots of half-eaten legs of deer and this, that, and the other, and bear poo and scratchings, and constantly watching our back and the kids shouting, "Hey, bear!" But we got through it, relaxed a little bit in the end. It was quite a hike. We managed to get to the creek a couple of times. There was a point where I went ahead and I just came around the corner and saw the blaze. Spent about 40 minutes looking around there. It was very overgrown. It really felt like it would be difficult to find anything. But I just get the feeling that we needed to be right at that point of the bridge, the red cross, and move across. We came around. It was a lovely, lovely hike. Kids loved it. I think we heard a bear at the end, started to move a bit faster, but we didn't quite get to the exact spot. This is me looking roughly at the spot just to the right was the point where I could see the blaze if I followed the creek. Here you can just see the bottom of Cathedral Rock. This is my partner taking a picture here. That's my 6-year-old there, telling me that Fenn could cross that. And then this shows more of a view. You can just see in the distance here the green area just beyond the creek there. That's where I was looking because that's kind of where you just saw it come into view. And there was a lovely point just after that mound you see in the middle, um, where there was a bit of an opening, and you saw a wonderful view of this rock. And there was an opening that was a bit looked a bit idyllic, and I thought, oh crikey, it's a bit like my wall for me. But when I got into there, it was very marshy, and I thought, I've left the kids with my partner there. I need to get back to them. I'm going to lose my shoes here, and it all felt a bit. And I guess that was the fault of being a newbie. I wasn't determined enough in there, but that was quite an interesting spot. This looked like a beaver dam sort of formation there. Um, when I started telling my missus about all of the hunt, she was a bit dismissive. I then took her through the solve of each clue. Then she was a bit more, that is quite a good solve. And when we got there, crikey, I was ready to go after about 4 or 5 hours. She wanted to keep going, so she really caught the bug at that point. Bit further up, some lovely scenery at this point. Coming from Wales, we've got some great mountains and rivers as well, so there's some similarities in that. But lots of pine trees and sagebrush there. There seemed to be a very old bridge up there, and it's a bit more open. We found a strange pit with lots of metal containers burnt, very weird. Lots of trees burnt. You can imagine blaze, blaze, blaze. Everything's blazing. Isn't this rock? What is it? And so it was wonderful, but starting to realise, this is huge. How on earth can you get to one point? And you know what? They told me it'd happen, and it did. This was us on the way back, overlooking Joff Lake. There's a new hydroelectric place there, a little reservoir. And the water comes through and down, and it goes into Joff Lake. And this is us looking back on the rock from over the top as well, when we'd hiked up and across. And that was our solve. Just to go back to this one, we didn't quite get to where we were, and you might say, "Why are you sharing it? Go back next year, go back again." But being in the UK is really difficult. I guess cost a fortune. I found it really hard with the kids. I contacted Dale Nightsall. Probably gets 1,000 of them. Here's another newbie asking to go. Sorry, Dale. But I just wanted someone who was a bit more seasoned and knew about the threats of bears and stuff. Really didn't want to go alone and risk not getting back to the family. At the same time, taking the partner and the kids, just felt a bit exposed with it. I guess it comes with experience. We don't have the sort of threats you do with wildlife in Wales and England. But do you know what? I came away, I was absolutely gutted, I got to say. Took a while to get back on a couple of days later. We did go on another trek I'll briefly talk about. But I came away and reflected after our 5.5 weeks in the US and just thought, you know what? I think the thing that I want is just to solve it. I'm not, I mean, who knows how much it really is worth. It's nice to fantasize around it being multi-million pound, but who knows? Who knows? It could be much less. Could be more. But the sense of satisfaction I gleaned was from the possibility of solving it. And I didn't, as I thought through it, didn't really mind the thought of solving it collectively. And I thought, well, what can my part be from a distance in this whole thing in the community? And I really I thought about, do I, a lot of people stick on one solve, and that takes them years, and there's only so many of them they'll do. What if you look at multiple ones, put a lot of research into multiple ones, and share it, and you're going to get part way somewhere, you might help someone, you might. So I thought that might be my part in it. I thought, should I try and convince someone to go and have a look in that green area there? Should I go next year? But you know what? I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I wanted to show this to everyone. some thinking behind it. I'm now thinking, are they direct clues or are they more like crossword puzzle solves? And then you solve the individual line, and then you need to go to a map and find it, or the instructions, part solve it. So is it in a different place? Who knows? I'm going to be open minded, but I still got a fond feeling for it being somewhere near that X. Who knows? Maybe you should have a look. If you do find it, remember me and you will. Or give me half is fine. Whatever you want to do. So we spent the day looking around some of the lovely features, but then I contacted Dale again. He said, you know what, make sure you look at Ojo Caliente where Forrest used to bathe. And I had a look at that, I was a bit down, spent about 4 hours of an evening actually looking at a solve around there, trying to form one. And there was one quite compelling one involving Fairy Creek, not going down the other creek because down there is Queen's Laundry. They used to use a paddle to do your laundry. And there's no paddle up your creek, so go up Fairy Creek. And then things like that. And there's a lovely, I think it's Boulder Spring or something around there. Really interesting feature. You can't. It's off the trail. If you go over and it looked like quite a special place. I mean, we walked all the way to Grand Prismatic Spring. It was about 5 miles. We're absolutely knackered. On the way back, we were being followed by a storm. It caught up with us. We were freezing, lightning all around us, wind, hail. We were miserable when we got back to the car. My partner had a chest infection. She still hasn't forgiven me. And on the way back, we saw 3 people skinny dipping in Forest bathing spot in the hail. Crazy. But we were a bit, feel a bit sorry for ourselves. This is right by Ojo Caliente. I had a theory that maybe the blaze was the Grand Prismatic Spring. Ojo Caliente means hot eye. I showed my son the Grand Prismatic Spring from above, and I said, "What does that look like?" He said, "It looks like an eyeball." And I thought, "All right, okay, maybe there's something in that." But beyond that, I've not matured that. But I thought, let's have a look while we're here. We won't be back for a long time. So it was a hell of a trek, and a hell of a trek back. And this was the family overlooking Grand Prismatic Spring. As you imagine, I looked all down here, but it's so public. It just seemed like it would be. There was a comment Forrest had made around when someone finally finds it, they'll think, why didn't I think this before? It'll all feel a bit obvious, the suggestion. I thought, oh, this might be it. But so that was our solve. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully it's not been too long and drawn out. I'm hoping to be on A Gypsy's Kiss with Toby and Shelley. But I wanted to get this out there, and I'd love to hear your views. I'd love you to pick bits of it apart. I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the bits I don't think I've seen before, like Cathedral Rock as the blaze coming round. The hoodoos, I can't find that anywhere in what's been shared online, so I'm pretty proud of that one. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, I've been John O'Jones, and there may be some more of these, and I'll see you next time.